Let's imagine a situation. You've just been given possession of the ball and have a brief moment to plan your attack toward the opponent's net. In your way, though, are 3 professional players ready to shut you down at a moment's notice. Let's say the entire roster of Gen G. In the 1500 milliseconds you have to react, you come up with your plan and immediately start to execute. Now, if you're anything like me, you'd stand absolutely no chance in this situation. But if you're anything like Daniel, scoring here suddenly becomes doable. This play actually happened earlier in this season of the RLCS, and it's one of the many incredible 1v3 outplays that we'll be breaking down today. From brutal mind games to mechanical talent on a whole other level, these are 5 times Rocket League pros outplayed everyone. This video is sponsored by Repeat.gg. If you haven't already heard about Repeat, it's basically an esports tournament platform owned by PlayStation where gamers of all skills can earn cash and prizes simply by playing ranked games. You see, Repeat's tournaments aren't like your typical ones that would normally just get dominated by any SSLs that choose to enter. No, in these tournaments, all you need to do is play ranked. To explain it briefly, after connecting your Rocket League account, Repeat tracks your stats in your ranked games, and if you do well enough, you'll find yourself at the top of the leaderboard about to take home the cash prize. You can enter as many tournaments as you'd like, there's no limit to it. They're actually hosting 2 huge 2v2 tournaments right now, the Carry Team Invitational. It's a $2,000 prize pool for each. They've got one for North America and Europe. If you're interested in joining, click the link in the description to check it out. Thank you again to Repeat for sponsoring today's video. As I was diving into the archives to research this video, I discovered that, surprisingly, 1v3 outplays actually weren't all that common in the early days of Pro Rocket League, other than a few exceptions.
Solo plays from Mystic.
But even then, nearly all of these early 1v3s were only made possible because of, let's say, questionable defense.
And this is so close for them. They have a control. Oh, Turbo! The whole team!
Seriously, this play from 2017 was considered one of the best outplays in Pro Rocket League at the time. I'm sorry, but what are we doing here? Anyway, I don't think anyone is going to be disappointed to hear that I didn't bother breaking down these frankly embarrassing early outplays because I genuinely couldn't find any that I felt were worthy of an actual breakdown. However, that of course completely changed as the skill ceiling was raised, and you'll see that for yourself as we continue down this timeline. But first, let's start here in 2020 with one of the most picturesque outplays you could possibly imagine. Around this time in the Rocket League scene, there was a particular professional player in Europe that was gathering a lot of attention. There were many reasons he caught the eye of a big chunk of the community, but perhaps the most obvious one being that his presets often looked like this. This player's name is Flakes, and Flakes has a very unique and blunt view on the game of Rocket League.
Challenging isn't great. I don't know where people got that from.
As a professional player and content creator, his audience exploded on Twitch where he'd share his advice to help players rank up without using crazy fancy mechanics.
Like, we literally have a ball now because I didn't do anything.
And definitely the most common simple move that he became known for preaching was this mechanic called the power slide cut. Essentially just driving into the ball from the side with proper timing. It's super simple, but incredibly effective even at the highest level. And Flakes proved this by using this exact mechanic to embarrass the defense of one of the best teams in the world. Here we are in Week 2 League play of RLCS Season 9. To strike first and start the series, Flakes, using a card that should never be seen in pro play, finds himself with complete possession of the ball and space to work with. Upon noticing this, he touches the ball toward the midfield and lets it bounce on the ground to bait the opponents in, which in this case works perfectly for 2 out of the 3 defenders. Once the bait is set, he simply cuts into the ball, chipping it into the air, completely breaking the ankles of both defenders. This freeze frame of Relating Wave and Nachito being effortlessly destroyed by such a silly car design just feels so iconic, I have to say. And the beauty of this mechanic is that it allows Flakes to have an instant follow-up and easily shoot it past the last defender, leaving Virtuoso with no chance on the goal line. It's truly amazing how such simple movements can outplay an entire professional defense.
Both teams have had opportunity early here. Here's Flakes on the dribble. He's got 3 to go. Gets past 2. Over the last defender. Flakes starts it off for Barcelona.
The Gizmo. Flakes just making it look so easy. 2 people commit on endpoint, and then he's got the solid shot on net.
Let's be honest though, this outplay from Flakes may not have been as impressive mechanically. However, this next moment absolutely is. So let's move on to just a year later in 2021. The ceiling shot is a mechanic that has taken many forms over Rocket League's history. Ever since Squishy pushed the envelope with it back in 2017, plenty of variations have been created using the same setup. Musty flicks, ground pinches, double taps, and plenty more. However, in 2021, one particular player started using a specific flashy variation that allowed him to outplay entire defenses in very quick succession. There's not a lot of mechanics that are capable of that, but First Killer absolutely made it possible. In RLCS X Spring Regional 3, Rogue as the underdogs are facing off against NRG in the NA quarterfinals. In this play, Rogue initiate the pressure onto NRG off the kickoff, but after a couple not so valuable looks at the net, two Rogue players end up with 0 boost and with neither of the mid boosts available. So for better or worse, they each head all the way back to the 2 back corner boosts, which of course leaves First Killer all alone against the entire defense of NRG. Normally, this would almost certainly result in lost pressure for Rogue, but what FK does next leaves the casters in disbelief. First Killer races Justin to the corner boost and fortunately wins that race, which also gives them possession of the ball. In the same motion, he chips it to the air and jumps to the ceiling to set himself up with some version of a ceiling shot. Definitely not ideal as the ball bounces pretty hard off the ceiling, but somehow he finds a way to make it work. First Killer jumps off the ceiling to catch up to the ball and slams it to the floor at a speed that Garrett G simply cannot keep up with. And this is where Rocket League's unique carve physics play completely into First Killer's favor. You see, one of the weird things about dodges in Rocket League is that when you use your flip in the air, your vertical momentum in either direction, up or down, is instantly canceled. In most cases, this isn't all that noticeable. However, in a case where you're falling from the air at a pretty high speed, and then you use your flip, it's a lot more obvious. So even though First Killer is literally boosting straight to the ground and about to have a brutal crash landing, the moment he flips, that downward momentum completely stops, and thus allows the ball to perfectly bounce back up into his car and then directly to the top corner of the net. One more quick recovery later for the finish, and First Killer has successfully outplayed the entire defense.
The main problem from the defense for going for a couple of double commits, it was him and Garrett G. They both looked a bit disorientated, but Squishy was able to put one of the best shots we have seen just because of the sheer power. Maybe a double tap. Squishy couldn't get the save. This is ridiculous from First Killer.
He almost scores on the ground double tap right there.
While this outplay was more a matter of speed and simply being able to keep up, this next one actually couldn't be more different, as we move down the timeline again to one of the cleanest solo counterattacks in history. When it comes to ranking some of the best Rocket League goals of all time, I think we can all agree on a few different criteria that are most important. There's no doubt that clutchness is a factor. The closer it is to a Game 7 or Grand Finals, the higher we usually rank it. And also, of course, the mechanical difficulty / creativity of it is important as well. But when it comes to 1v3 outplays specifically, I think there's one more main factor that's just as important, which is the idea of beating all 3 opponents separately with 3 different moves. So the reason I love this next play so much is because it truly satisfies all of these criteria simultaneously. In the quarterfinals of the 2022 World Championship, Moist Esports and Furia ended up delivering what would become known as one of the greatest series of all time. The storylines, the highlights, the fact it went the distance to Game 7 all make it that much more memorable. And in Game 5 specifically, Rise pulled off one of my favorite 1v3 plays ever scored.
They're on the rotation back.
In this situation, Furia begin with the upper hand as Yan puts on a shot, and Card tries to bump Rise on the goal line. He actually does find the bump, and it very well could have resulted in a goal, but Rise counters this perfectly by flipping just milliseconds after being bumped to continue his original trajectory toward the ball. Already, that's 1 opponent down. As Rise lands, he sharply turns toward the corner boost to refill his tank, but not too sharp so he can still keep his momentum. The perfect compromise. Ahead of him now lay 2 different defenders, each with plenty of boost. So while he still has a bit of space left, Rise quickly takes to the air and turns his car over for a flip reset. The only problem with this though is that Kaio is way ahead of him. In fact, as Rise drops it down, you can see Kaio already reacting to it and preparing to intercept the flip reset. But rather than delay using his flip like normal, Rise actually uses it instantly to send it right past him and outplay the second of 3 opponents. So at this point, with only one defender left covering his direct path to net, Rise's only option, if he wants to keep this going, is to take it to the backboard for a double tap. Way easier said than done, obviously, but to Rise, it's absolutely no issue. This is the first goal in the video that was actually scored in front of a crowd. And to no one's surprise, it really does make it that much more special.
Hit one another, Rise is under pressure. Matrix is around the demo, gets the ball. He's now taking to the opposite side of the field. On the reset, can he outplay everybody? Rise! That was otherworldly! Brilliance from Rise!
Brute skill is definitely one of the ways you can outplay your opponents, and that's shown very clearly here. But it's definitely not the only way. So let's jump forward just one more year to see exactly what I'm talking about. Throughout Rocket League's history, the title of the best Rocket League player in the world has almost always been up for debate. Outside of Kronovi in the pre-RLCS days, there's only been one other era where pretty much everyone agreed on it being a single player. This player, of course, is Zen in 2023.
The man, the magician, the superstar, it's the signature god!
His ability to have such a big impact individually while also fitting in extremely well as a team player is really what skyrocketed his reputation. The waves he made when he entered the scene were impossible to ignore, as even other top pros admitted and recognized just how next level he was.
This is funny, because whoever gets this guy wins RLCS.
So it's definitely no surprise that he ends up in a video about outplaying entire teams. Here at the 2023 Spring Major in the lower finals, Zen and Vitality are looking to continue their run through the lower bracket. And to strike first in Game 1, Zen begins a solo play of his own. As he transitions to the air, he quickly notices Exotic challenging him early on the wall. So he wastes no time and flips the ball forward to get it by the first. However, in order not to send away possession, Zen brilliantly puts it off the ceiling so it would bounce right back to him. In the same motion, he gets a flipper set, and it's at this point that Carmine Corp are in big trouble. They may have two defenders back, but both of them have low boost. And also, I mean, this is Zen we're talking about. Vatira jumps up early to cover as much of the shot as possible, but Zen recognizes this in real time and opts to fake it beneath him instead. It's at this moment that Zen has safely gotten by Vatira. Their trajectories definitely aren't going to cross, and therefore he only has one defender left to worry about. So what does this talented young prodigy do here? Well, the answer is nothing. Nothing. He doesn't do anything. In fact, he actually drives away from the play like a boss, I might add. As the last defender with no boost, a normally very composed player in Itachi overcompensates, hitting the brakes slightly too much, and he misses his double jump trajectory. You could definitely chalk this up to just being a one-off mistake that would have happened anyway, but given the context of Zen's reputation at this time, the respect that all other pros undoubtedly had for him, it truly feels like such a quintessential example of his impact on the scene. One of those perfect situations where the simple threat of something dangerous is all that's needed to make the defense panic. So as the ball bounces and slowly crosses the goal line, some see it as a random, embarrassing, or anticlimactic goal to forget about, but I see it as a symbolic moment that brilliantly encapsulates an entire era of Rocket League history.
Welcome to the age of Zen!
Or maybe I'm just being dramatic. Anyway, here's the clip.
In the matchup against Rule 1, as much of a defensive performance as they put on, they could not stop Vitality when they got going. Neither could they stop that man right there. The ball's in! He gets it right through. First goal to Vitality.
He just snaps his fingers and the ball ends up in the net. Everybody got thrown off here.
Before we get into the last moment, I feel like I have to give a special shout to this clip from Arsenal in 2020. It went viral at the time. It's definitely worthy of this list in my opinion, and I know you guys would mention it if I didn't, but unfortunately, there's no replay file of this game available to the public, so it wasn't possible to do a breakdown of it. Anyway, with that being said, it's time to move on to possibly the most mechanical professional goal ever scored. As you might expect, the most impressive goal all around in this video is also, of course, the most recent. As time passes, pro players continue to top themselves with even crazier plays. And this season, Daniel scored one of the most insane ones I've ever seen. In the grand finals of NA Regional 3, Gen G and G2 end up tied in Game 3, which sends them to overtime.
First, finally in overtime.
And only about 12 seconds into this overtime is when the highlighted play begins. Apparently Jack slightly misreads the bounce off the upper corner. So instead of sending a long shot to the G2 half, he lasers it forward directly into the hands of Daniel. Because the ball is headed to him at such a high speed, normally this would be extremely hard to control properly. But Daniel recognizes this and turns his car to the side to smoothly land in a backwards position, which allows him to just barely dodge the demo. In this same motion, Daniel jumps and pre-flips to catch up to the ball again, and despite its downward path, he gets underneath it and lifts it above First Killer, who no doubt is completely stunned. The difficulty of this pre-flip into the carry cannot be overstated. Even the best in the world find this portion alone astounding. But there's just one more problem ahead. Daniel is now nearly completely out of boost and still has another professional defender to get by, who also has a completely full tank, by the way. So just when you'd think this is finally where this already incredible display of mechanics would be shut down, Daniel uses his last remaining 10 boost to barely reach underneath the ball and lift it right back up to the top shelf of the net. Daniel executed perfect mechanical Rocket League for a solid 6 seconds straight. There was zero room for error, all the way down to his boost count at the very end. But against all odds, he still managed to steal a goal from an impossible scenario. After this moment, a debate roared through the community about whether or not this was the most mechanical pro goal of all time. But I think no matter which side you take on it, we can all appreciate the excellence of it.
Collide. But now Jack gets it out, and Daniel flipping the play on its head, dribbling above First Killer, Chronic in the net, so was Jack. The bump! Daniel! He's a hero!
What a special play from Daniel! He half flips into an air dribble into a flip reset.
If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button to let me know, and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you guys for watching as always. I'll see you in the next one.